Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani. Welcome to the Beyond Wellness Radio podcast. Feel free and head over to justinhealth.com. We have all of our podcast transcriptions there, as well as video series on different health topics ranging from thyroid to hormones, ketogenic diets, and gluten. While you're there, you can also schedule a consult with myself, Dr. J, and or our colleagues and staff to help dive into any pressing health issues you really want to get to the root cause on. Again, if you enjoy the podcast, feel free and share the information with friends or family, and enjoy the show. Today, we're going to be talking about putting on muscle mass, how to avoid being flabby. We're going to talk about digestion, exercise, being able to absorb and break down protein. Also, you can work on helping to be, strong, functionally strong, lean, etc. We're really excited to dive into today's topic here. Evan, how are we doing, man?
Yeah, doing really well. And you guys asked for this. We didn't just come up with this how to not be flabby topic. You guys said this, during so many consultations that Dr. J and I have done personally with people. That's what women say. So we're going to address that. They say, I'm flabby and I don't want to be. And what do I do about it? And if you were to ask like a conventional weight trainer, bodybuilder type person, they're going to tell you to probably eat more calories and just work out harder. And most of the people that have come to us, they've already been down that rabbit hole and they're far more symptomatic and sicker than at the level of where they can just try to hit the gym harder. And that's really, to me, not the answer because I'm lean, I stay lean. Now, granted, I'm not a 50 to 60-year-old woman that has this particular issue, but I don't have any sort of issue to where I feel like I need to eat less. I don't count. I don't measure. I don't think any of the women or men even listening or watching this, I don't think you need to count or measure or weigh. I mean, this food obsession, our ancestors didn't do this. They're not out in the pasture in Native American times looking at the bison and saying, oh no, that's my 2 ounces of beef. I gotta stop. Or my bison, I can't go beyond that 4 ounce portion. That's too much. So there's deeper root causes like estrogenic compounds in the environment and mycotoxins that affect your leptin receptors and create this fat storage mode. So there is some more modern toxin issues that hopefully we can dive into today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first thing out of the gates is we need to make sure we're consuming enough protein. That's really important. So, protein is essentially the building blocks to help put on muscle and to keep our body strong. And so, what's kind of the general sliding scale? Again, it depends upon how much you're wanting to exercise, what your goals are, right? So, as a female, you're not going to just be able to hit some lifting and then get overly bulky. It's just not going to happen. But kind of a general scale is about a half a gram to 1 gram per pound of body weight is a pretty good rule of thumb. So if you're a guy like I'm 6'2", 215 pounds, I would probably, if I want to really get bigger, I need to be doing at least 200, 230, grams of protein per day, right? Typically, I'm at about maybe zero point 0.6 to like 3/4 a gram per pound of body weight. So like maybe around 150 grams. Usually about 5 to 6 ounces of protein per meal ish. And so that's kind of where I need to be. At one, protein is very satiating. I'm making sure I'm consuming fat with it. So then it's stabilizing blood sugar. It's providing a lot of amino acids, which are, important for brain chemistry, blood sugar stability, mood. Also adding in fat with it, which one, fat tends to have good high quality cholesterol from animal products. So that provides building blocks for hormones, fat soluble vitamins, really good nutrients. And then from there, your carbs are going to be dialed in based on your activity levels. That's where more starch, if you're more active, if you're already pretty lean, you could probably handle more starch. If you're carrying extra weight, you want to mitigate the starch, go lower on the starch and focus more on non-starchy vegetables, maybe a little bit of low sugar fruit and kind of time that up. The next thing is stimulus. You're going to need to move your muscles ideally, and it doesn't have to be a crazy amount. It depends what your goals are. If you're just a woman and you want to just have your muscles just feel solid, that could be something like Pilates, where you're doing body weight or cable movements. Typically finding a movement where you can do about 12 to 15 as a female reps, with maybe about 1 to 2 reps in the tank. So you kind of go to failure, but maybe you're about 1 to 2 reps in the tank. And I like 1 to 2 reps in the tank just because it makes it so you're probably not going to hurt yourself. The more skilled you are, the more you can go right to failure. That's better. The less skilled you are with the movement, if you don't have a good trainer watching you, probably leaving 1 to 2 reps in the tank will help prevent you getting injured. But I just recommend starting with push-ups. Good full range push-ups. I like having a bar on my push-ups because I can go deeper, which is great. And my face won't hit the ground, right? So I can go deeper, go all the way down, and then go all the way up. So full range here. You can get a TRX, which is a suspension trainer, put it in the door jam. I have one over here in my gym, and you can do a full range pull. So you're working the push, pull, and then of course you can also do lat pull downs like this, or hands facing to you. So pull up, chin up, chin ups in the face. Do more of the lats. Yeah, chin ups more lats. Pull up is going to be more biceps. So you're trying to work every single range that comes at you. And ideally, with the pull up, you can get some elastic bands that hook around your bar and that go around your knee. That gives you that little extra push. So the key is just find simple movements that you can do to failure, plus or minus 1 or 2 reps in the tank. That's a really good stimulus out of the gates. And the next thing is really dialing in the protein. So we talked about amounts there, and then we can go into other things like digestion and other gut issues that could be impairing that protein absorption later on.
So I can hear a woman right now saying, "You're nuts. I'm not going to do a pull up. There's no way I can do a push up. I'm not anywhere close to that fitness level." And I would say, if you're not, if you do have access to a gym, if you're into a gym, I'm not anymore. I used to have a gym membership. I don't need it anymore. I've got a good setup at home, so I feel like I'm great without it. But if you were to have access to a gym, even for $10 a month, there's a lot of good ones like Planet Fitness that are out there now, to where you can do some of these assisted, like type exercises where they have assisted pull-ups, or they have like assisted dips where you have weight that literally pushes you. It, like, if you weigh 200, you add 50 pounds, it'll make you feel like you weigh 150, and you can start there. So you're literally starting with like a negative weight of your true weight. So those machines are available if you feel like you're just so out of shape you can't even do one push up or one pull up. And then you could just go on your knees too. I mean, you could start out with push-ups on your knees as
That's
needed.
it.
You got to find
Yep.
people where they're at. So if you're like, "Man, I'm too discouraged. I can't do a freaking pull up. I give up. I'm not doing anything." Don't have that attitude about it. And if you could have one piece of equipment, I mean, I got to say, I love the row machine. I'm glad you got one too. The
Yep.
rower is
I love a row
awesome.
machine.
Works your legs, works your backs, works your arms, your traps. I mean, if I could only take one thing to an island, some are going to argue a kettlebell, which probably is more functional. But in
Yep.
terms of enjoyment, I got to say, I really enjoy and love the rower. And I
I
still
love it
think
too.
I think there's a place for kettlebells and dumbbells. I mean, those are awesome, obviously universal things. But for women, that and I just know this based on personal experience. Maybe younger females are not going to be as turned away, but I can tell you, if I try to take a kettlebell over to a 70-year-old woman, she's not going to be interested in swinging that thing around. She's going to be worried about hurting her back or swinging the wrong way, and it's a lot more intimidating than sitting down and just simply rowing. So this is hard to give one universal prescription because there's different people listening, but I would say rower is very easy, low impact on your joints, and not intimidating at all.
Yeah. And then what's the name of our rower that we have?
It's called a concept two.
Concept two. Yeah. I think I have the D. You have the D as well,
Yeah,
right?
there, I think the D is,
Yeah.
there's one that's a little different, but yeah, the concept 2D, it's a rotor. It's very, very sturdy. You get what you pay for. So it's around $1,000, but it's worth it.
It's worth it. You can stand it up, so it saves a lot of space too. Yeah, I like that for more of my interval stuff. So I'll do a 30-second on, 20-second off. I'll do 8 sets of that. That's gonna be more for like high intensity, just really good kind of cardio interval stuff. I like that just for keeping metabolism up, keeping the body a little bit more lean and functional. I like the fact that you're doing something that's on the cardio side that's putting you more into extension like this, and you're using your hamstrings to pull yourself as you slide right back and forward. You're using a lot of your hamstrings, and then of course a lot of the back, where a lot of cardio stuff, like whether it's a bike or you're on your Peloton or you're on an elliptical, you're kind of hunched over in this flexion position. I love the fact that you're opening things up
I
and more
agree.
an
Yeah.
extension. So I like that. That's good. That's definitely on the cardio side. Now, like Evan talked about earlier, like easiest thing out of the gates, a TRX suspension trainer is great because you can just change the angle in which you're at. So like if here's the suspension trainer hanging, and if I'm like at this position, this is going to be, meaning I'm flat with the ground, I'm like at a 90-degree angle from that suspension trainer. That's going to be the hardest. So you can always just change it so you're at 45 degrees or less. It's like the equivalent of like kneeling or doing a wall push up, right? The angle is less perpendicular, and so therefore you're going to have less force. So you can always just do a TRX trainer and just change the angle so that push up or pull up is going to be less. And then in between, you can also even do cables. If you have cables at a gym, that's great, or you can get some flexible bands that either wrap around, like like let's say I have like a big squat bar, so I'd wrap it around that, and so it would be behind me like this, and I would do pushes like this, or I could do pulls like that. That's great. Just if you're doing cables, if it's not fully secure, I do recommend wearing safety glasses. People have gotten those things have snapped, hit you in the eye. You can get some safety ones that like have like a little protective, I want to say like a wrapper around the cable. So if it does break, the wrapper prevents it from like whacking you in the eye. Does that make sense? So protective band or really kind of a safety based cable that's not going to break. Or if it does, it won't whack you. So those are good options for you out of the gates for stimulus because you need to have the stimulus, right? Push, pull, right? Pull in the vertical motion. You can even do a row in that motion. You can do hip extension movements, which the easiest thing there is going to be like a kettlebell swing. That's going to be easy, or some type of a deadlift, right? Is going to be really an easy one there out of the gates. Anything else you want to say about just the lifting? I recommend just kind of keep it simple and do primal movements that are just going to one put resistance in that plane of motion and just work within that plus or minus 1 to 2 reps of failure. So you're not going to hurt yourself, but you also feel a little bit fatigued the next day.
Well, just simply moving throughout the day too. I mean, a lot of people are listening right now. They're sitting at an office chair, they're sitting in their car. You and I are both standing up right now, and we both do stand and sit. Sometimes I'll put my desk on the very lowest setting to where I'll just literally be on one knee, like I'm proposing, and I will work on one knee for a little while. So you and I are doing something very unnatural, and many people listening are. We're looking at screens and we're in a box working on a computer. And so that's very unnatural. So I try to counteract that as best as I can by trying to either do the row machine on my lunch break and go from sitting to standing to kneeling and just try to do these positions. So people listening, I'm not saying you got to stand all day. I did that for a while. That hurt my back. So I think too much of one thing is not good either. And if you're a woman, you're in an office and you've got like high heel shoes on, you're trying to do it. Obviously, take your shoes off. Try to go barefoot. Maybe you can get a really good like silicone, like rubber mat that they use for like washing dishes at the
Yeah,
sink.
anti-fatigue mat.
Yeah, like an anti-fatigue mat. I mean, I would do something like that. These are the simple strategies. Now, would it be more optimal to be out in the sunshine all day, mostly skin exposed, grounded, walking the beach 2 miles a day and eating grass-fed meat all day and, having, handsome men like wave banana leaves and keep you cool? That'd be awesome, but people still have to work. So I think you've got to work in some of these functional strategies with your normal real life. And then let's go into the more, I guess you would call it nuance, but really more of the deeper root causes, because I've had people lose 50 to 75 pounds by changing nothing in regards to diet and nothing in regards to fitness. These were people that were already relatively active. These were people that already had their diet dialed in. They were mostly animal based, good quality meats, doing fine on the protein and the fats, but they had these other root cause issues. And I'd say the first place would be to go is the gut. And you and I have talked about this in other aspects, but in other podcasts too, but the gut can really be a big place where you're going to become flabby. And this is really due to the recirculation of toxins. When you have bacterial overgrowth in your gut, which is an extremely common thing, this is not rare. When you have a bacterial overgrowth, in general, that can create an elevation of what's called beta glucuronidase, which is an enzyme that's going to cause you to recirculate hormones. And so you have this personal trainer beating you up and you're not making progress. If you don't look at this marker and you don't fix the gut, you're likely not going to have many results. And the personal trainer is going to take it personal. They're going to try to hit you harder. They're going to try to kill you. And I've heard this before where women are literally dropping out of fitness classes because the instructor's just beating, beating, beating. And it's like, that's the definition of insanity. So you've got to get to these root causes. If you've got this recirculation of hormones and or toxins like mycotoxins, I don't care how hard you hit the CrossFit, you're not going to get the results that you want.
Absolutely. And also just if the fat's over that muscle, you're going to feel a little bit flabbier, even though the muscle underneath is getting a little bit stronger. So, I always recommend getting your macronutrients dialed in, getting your carbohydrates in check so you're not overdoing it. Because the more carbohydrate you make, the more insulin, the more you're going to be storing your fuel as fat. And again, the more your metabolism's higher, you're more ectomorphic, you're leaner naturally, you can handle more carbohydrates, right? The goal is that we individualize things for each person because, we talk about low carb or keto. Some people don't need to do that. And some people can be keto at much higher levels of carbohydrates. Some people can be ketogenic at 100 grams to 200 grams of carbohydrate a day based on their activity and their metabolism. Some need to be like minus 20 or 30 net. So everyone's a little bit different. I think that's important. There's some individuality there. I would say the next thing is if you're a female, it's really important. Menopause can really throw women's metabolism off. If there's a low thyroid or Hashimoto's, that can really throw metabolism off. So if you're struggling, you're having a hard time, we have to look at your thyroid function, look at your T3, your thyroid levels, look at antibodies, make sure that's under control. If progesterone and estrogen is very low, especially estriol and progesterone, that can affect muscle building. Progesterone is really important for collagen and elasticity formation. It's part of the reason why lots of women get a lot of varicose veins is low progesterone, which has a major effect on the elasticity of the veins. So very important there. And then I would also say toxin exposure, right? If you have lots of estrogens, if you're estrogen dominant from birth control pills or estrogen from meats or milks or soy, that could put you in more of a fat storing mode because these hormones produce more fat. And then guess what? Your fat also has an exocrine function in regards to producing estrogen. So the fatter you get, then the more fat you get, and the more estrogen your fat cells produce. It's this like downward spiral that just kind of is a positive feedback loop that gets worse and worse as you go along. So you really have to look at toxins in meat, pesticides, which are all hormone based, drugs that are going to have estrogens in it, birth control pills, etc., milks, plastics, eating your foods out of plastic, especially plastics that you're warming things up on or you're letting UV light hit. Definitely not a good thing out of the gates.
Yeah, well said on the thyroid too. And your personal trainer is likely not testing your thyroid, so obviously that's something that we're going to be doing. And then also, we have a lot of experience with fitness, so we do try to educate people and give fitness plans and advice where we can there. And I think the big thing is people are skipping the foundational pieces. I mean, it's fine if you just want to go sign up for a class and try to go get active, but really I would say get some of these labs run first. Get your gut looked at so we can see what type of bacterial overgrowth you have. As I mentioned, this is an epidemic problem. This is not a rare situation, and the gut could be one of the big wrenches in your gears that's not allowing you to lose the weight properly. And like I said, I have people literally lose 75 pounds just by fixing some of these strategies, like fixing digestion. Now, for some people, it could go the other way. Some of these issues with females, it'll cause weight loss, and they're having issue with getting muscle back, building it back. And so it depends. It depends on where you're at. Some they lose muscle and they still have body fat, but they're thin. They're like a skinny fat, they call it. You could have a woman who's 5'2" and she's 140 pounds, and then all of a sudden she gets sick, loses weight. Now she's 120, but she still looks flabby. That could just be because she's lost that muscle due to malabsorption, due to these infections like H. pylori. You and I have talked about the story of me where I lost 25 pounds without trying. I didn't really have much weight to lose, but I got super skinny due to my gut infections. And so it took me literally several years to build the muscle back. But the first step to building back was to get rid of the gut infections and then start working on detox. I had a ton of mold toxin issues, and that really screwed up my metabolism to where I was I was very hangry, like 2 to 3 hours I'd have to eat. And no matter what, no matter if it was a grass fed steak or what. And now I could literally go from 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. without food, and I feel perfectly fine. I feel satiated. My brain works better. I have more mental clarity. So a lot of it's as you mentioned, it's the blood sugar involvement too. So you have to fix that.
110%. So, like the big checklist out of the gates is don't do too much carbohydrate. Too much carbohydrate, too much sugar will make you a little bit flabby, whether it's through cortisol, whether it's through inflammation, oxidative stress. Of course, if you're eating a lot more carbs, right, you're probably not getting enough protein typically, right? Unless you're someone who's higher metabolism and really making sure proteins and carbs are dialed in and you're doing a lot of activity. Most people, if they do too much carbs, too much sugar, they tend to not be getting enough protein. So half your body weight in grams is usually pretty decent out of the gates. And then you can go up to 1 gram per pound of body weight, depending on how active you are. So some are going to be good. Most women are going to be good somewhere between a half to maybe 2/3 to 3/4. And
Now,
then
in
a
the
lot of your
beginning,
male people that are wanting to get really big, they may want to be 1 gram per pound of body weight. That's kind of a good sliding scale.
I was saying I don't think people need to count, measure, weigh, and then now you're giving numbers. So I just want to clarify kind of where I am with it. I think you can and should to get a ballpark of where you're at based on your meals, but you should not be obsessing about it. And you should
Yeah, so
not
I
be
keep
like
it really
looking.
simple, right? And so what is about 4 ounces of protein is going to be about 25 to 30 grams of protein, right? And so for most women, that's going to be about a palm to a fist size. And so when you're looking at picking up, you're serving yourself a meal, it's very simple. There's no weighing or measuring. You're just kind of like, what is about a palm to a fist size in regards to my hand, in regards to that serving of protein on the plate? And you just scoop yourself up that amount anyway. And that's your amount. So there's no real crazy amount of weighing or measuring. It's just kind of eyeballing kind of your own anatomy comparatively to what's on the plate. And that's usually a pretty good rule of thumb. And you did pretty good is because you're going to feel satiated after that meal. You're going to eat about 10 minutes after you finish eating. The goal is we want to feel satiated enough where we can go 4 to 5 hours to the next meal. So that kind of gives you enough where we're not pulling on a scale, we're not having to measure, but you got to know that, like, in the end, if you're eating enough, well, what does that really mean? Really, you ate some size amount. What is that size? It's probably going to be between 3 and 5 ounces of protein on average, and then you can just use your hand as a good frame of reference when you're serving yourself up. Keep it simple.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. Because, like I said, a lot of people they're just so brainwashed from conventional dieting and stuff, and they get freaked out about food. They have like a PTSD of food portioning and all that, and they think they have to do that, and you don't. And once you get clued in with your satiety signals, it's so easy you don't even think about it. And
It's just a good frame of reference, right? Because
yeah,
in the end, you got to serve yourself up something. How do you know to serve yourself up this much versus this much, right? So
yeah,
usually, you know, 3 to 6 ounces, 3 to 5 ounces would be pretty good. So like for a guy, right? I'm 6'2", 210 ish, right? I have bigger hands, so like I may serve a protein amount the size of my hand. So go between a palm to a fist to a full hand is usually that frame of reference. The more active you are, the more stressed you are, the more you're doing exercise, move to a protein amount the size of your full hand. The less active you are, you can go to that palm size. And if you're just starting out, like you're coming on board from being like a vegan vegetarian where there's not a lot of protein, start with a quarter palm and then kind of work your way up. And again, if you have problems with protein, it typically means you have low hydrochloric acid, low enzymes, and you have to really work with a good functional medicine person to get your HCl and enzymes up. And you may have H. pylori and SIBO and other bacterial imbalances that are impeding your digestion. So you really have to look deeper if those symptoms come up. It's not the protein, it's the fact that your digestive system is weaker and cannot tolerate the protein.
yeah. Well said. A lot of people blame the meat. Oh, I feel bad when I eat meat, so I'm not going to eat it. It's like no, that's you're supposed to be doing that. Like I had a client the other day that was in South Dakota, super strict vegan. And I'm like, okay, how dedicated are you to being vegan? Like, well, they're like, I'm totally dedicated. I'm like, okay, so if let's just role play. I was like, okay, so if there were no planes, no trains, no buses, no semi trucks, and it's the middle of February and there's a foot of snow on the ground in South Dakota, are you going to be able to stick to your diet? And the answer is no way. I'm like, well, what would you be eating? Well, the only thing that's in the landscape, animals. So
Yep.
we don't have to turn into that podcast, but I just want people to know how important these things are. They really do help stabilize blood sugar. Could you make vegetarian vegan diets work? Maybe if you try really, really hard, but that's a whole nother podcast. Let's go back to the mycotoxin piece for a minute because
Yep.
something we're seeing is something called zearalenone, which is
Yep.
a highly, highly estrogenic mycotoxin. It comes from a mold called Fusarium, which grows in water damaged buildings. Now, you will get exposed to some of this from moldy, contaminated grains, but I would say the vast majority, 90% of it, I would estimate, is probably from buildings, meaning whether your mother had mold and passed it in utero. And if you were breastfed, if you went to moldy daycare as a kid, moldy elementary, middle, high school, moldy homeschool, moldy college, moldy dorm, moldy office building. I mean, this is an epidemic problem. I see it literally every single day, all day. And zearalenone really screws up your estrogen, actually, far more than soy. It's way more estrogenic than soy. So we do talk about, the pitfalls of doing like soy protein and that kind of thing. But man, zearalenone will screw you up way more than soy protein will. Man, this is something you have to use binders to pull it out of the system. So if you're struggling with weight loss, you are having these estrogen dominant symptoms, maybe you've worked on the hormone piece, but you're still struggling. Maybe you've implemented something like calcium D-glucarate to work on that glucuronidation pathway, but you're still suffering. You may need to look into this, and we measure this via urine. So this is where, like you mentioned, a good workup comes in handy. We're going to do urine, we're going to do stool. As needed, we can look into these different body systems and find the dysfunction. But this is the real root cause functional medicine strategy to have lean muscle mass and lose body fat. And unfortunately, this is a very, very not talked about discussion. You and I talked before we hit record. There's a lot of talking heads on the internet, people that'll say this study says that and this study says that, but none of them are actually doing the clinical work. And we wouldn't be able to do what we do if we didn't get results. And we get results because we're running the right labs, we're doing the right root cause strategies, which is getting these toxins out of the system. And I've seen it in children as young as 5. I've seen it in 2, 3, 4 year olds. I've seen it in my own kids. We've tested their urine and seen mycotoxins. So this is a problem that it does affect kids. Now, obesity in children, usually there is diet issues, but I have seen in some cases, I had a lady in New York, her 8-year-old was basically eating paleo, but she was obese and she had extremely high levels of zearalenone. Luckily for this little girl, we were able to do binders. She was able to swallow pills, which was great because it made it easier. And boom, this kid lost weight. She didn't change anything with diet. She just detoxed. So honestly, with so much toxin that we're up against, I would say detox support for life is really how I approach the conversation with people.
Exactly. So if you're in a moldy home, definitely get your home tested. If you have a lot of mold toxins out of the gate, it depends on kind of where you're at. If there's an active mold stress in the environment, I typically recommend work on getting your digestion, your diet, your inflammation dialed in if there's no active mold in your environment, and then work on dealing with mold detoxification once you have more stability with all your other organ systems and immune function. So just depends upon where you're coming from. If you have like active mold in your environment, that's the easiest way to detoxify out of the gates is get the environment kind of more dialed in. And we have podcasts on that topic that we can put in the links below. Evan, anything else you want to highlight for the listeners? So, I mean, digestion is really important. HCl enzymes, bacterial overgrowth, poor digestion. We talked about getting enough protein. And again, you kind of talked about measuring, not measuring, but just kind of using your own anatomy as a frame of reference because you have to serve yourself up anyway in regards to what you're eating. So it just gives you a good frame of reference so you know how much to give. And then ideally eat enough so you feel full and that you last about 4 to 5 hours. Now, if you're working with trainers out of the gates, do enough where you feel sore, not overly sore the next day or two. Make sure you walk out of the gym feeling more energized than when you started. And make sure you can emotionally repeat what you're doing. You're not feeling so emotionally exasperated. And then also that next day or that later on that day, if it's a morning workout, make sure you don't feel run over by a bus. Make sure you're doing just enough where your body can adapt to it. It's all about adaptation. Can you adapt to it? From it, can you feel better than afterwards? And again, if you're doing a brand new movement, you may feel a little bit sore because it's a new movement. So just, try to keep that in the back of your head too.
Yeah, and if you can't recover, then there's probably some level of mitochondrial dysfunction. We're also going to look at that. If we look at chemical profile testing, there's a marker there. If we look at in organic acids, we're going to look at mitochondria there. So for me, after I got exposed to mold, I will tell you my performance and my recovery was terrible. I mean, I used to recover in like a day or two. It was like 3 days. I was still sore. It's like, man, this is not right. Once I got the mitochondria working better, retested, looked at it, I confirmed, hey, that was directly correlated. And we've talked about this, I think, briefly before, but the issue of bacterial overgrowth and that producing high levels of lactic acid. So you could have a high baseline level of lactic acid, which creates this soreness, even just from the overgrowth in your gut. So we'll have women that'll say, oh my God, I'm so sore and I haven't done anything, or all I did was go in the garden. Why am I so damn sore? Their bucket was already so full due to the gut infection. So fix that, test for it, and fix it. And then the last thing I was going to say was on the environment, which is that you can't get well in a sick environment. So whether that's bad lighting, like LED lighting, try to use incandescent bulbs, like have natural light, like I'm surrounded by a bunch of windows, getting that bright light exposure to help regulate your cortisol rhythm, making sure you're using Twilight or some other app at night on your phone if you're doing blue light at night, because we know that blue light can make you fat through various mechanisms affecting glucose and cortisol, making sure you're detoxing, making sure you're not wearing synthetic fragrance. I mean, there's so many people. We ask this on the intake form. Do you use scented products? I will tell you, I'm very surprised how many people are seeking out natural functional medicine and they still use scented laundry detergent, dryer sheets, all these synthetic fragrances. They can affect your hormones
Yep,
and they're not good. They are bad toxins,
totally.
they're endocrine disruptors. So go free and clear. It's not expensive. Every mainstream brand has a free and clear unscented version. So implement that easily. You don't want to be wearing endocrine disruptors on your clothes all day. You're already exposed to those. If you go out even to Chipotle, which I think is one of the best places you could go if you have to eat out, even their bowls have those nonstick chemicals in there. So you're getting exposed to toxins, even if you're not trying. The last thing you want to do is wear those and put your husband or your kids in those clothes. So go fragrance free, please.
And
And
also, by the way, if you show up to the stores, like my wife got Thai the other day, I went and picked it up for her, and they like scooped it and put it in like this hot coconut, curry in a plastic container. And so I recommend if you can, keep a Pyrex container in your car. So if you go out to these places, literally bring your own glass Pyrex. Hey, can you please put it in this?
they
Much
might
better.
comply. Yeah.
I've done it before. I've done it with Thai a lot of times because it's so hot. So I'll just bring it, but like, hey, can you please have the cooks put it in this, please?
That's awesome. I
That's
travel
much
with my
better
own
option.
we travel with our own water bottles. We'll bring stainless steel cups everywhere we go. So we're not drinking water that's going to be contaminated with small amounts of pesticide and herbicide and pharmaceutical drugs. You can look up the Environmental Working Group for people listening. Type in EWG water report and you can put in your zip code. Here in Kentucky, where I am, we have certain chemicals in the water hundreds of times higher than the safe levels that are all highly carcinogenic and endocrine disruptors. So this is not just we're being picky. No, the water in tap water is toxic. So you need to travel with filtered water, and
100%.
you're saving your gut. We know that parts per billion of glyphosate damages good bacteria, which creates bacterial overgrowth. So unfortunately, it has become more complicated to become healthy. Have you seen those memes? I'm sure you have, of like a bunch of skinny people at the beach in the 1960s and then all the obese people in the 2020s at the beach. And it's like, what happened? And
Yeah.
there was a lot less of that toxic exposure back then than now.
Yeah, it was also carbohydrates too. I mean, there was no trans fat back then. If you look at if you look at like the macronutrients per decade, protein's relatively flat. You'll see fat drop and you'll see carb increase. So really it's a lot more carbs.
And it
It's
was real foods.
a lot less good fat. So of course, good healthy saturated fats. I mean, up until 1988, McDonald's had like beef tallow. Up until I think it's the CSPA, whatever, one of these vegan groups came in and wanted soybean oil, which was just disastrous. I mean, if you had reasonably non-GMO free um, potatoes in some beef tallow, that's amazing. That's actually not even that bad. But they changed it to soy in 88. And so you have a lot more processed vegetable oils, omega 6, that just really damaged, that gets into your cell membrane and really toxifies your cell membrane. It takes years to come out. So make sure you're consuming really good, high quality animal saturated fats. And if you're doing, monounsaturated, keep it to like avocado, keep it to high quality cold pressed olive oil, and try to get at least half your fats from high quality saturated fats. That's
Yeah,
important.
the oils are, man, we could do let's do a whole like oil special. But in general,
Yep.
yeah, the seed
Sounds
oils
good.
and all that are no good.
Well, guys, if
Soybean.
you enjoyed today's podcast, please let us know. Put it in the notes, put it in the description. Please give us a share with your friends or family. Also, give us a like and a thumbs up. That helps the search algorithm. And if you want to reach out to Evan, head over to evanbrand.com. There'll be a link where you can click and work with Evan. Head over to my site, justinhealth.com. I'm Dr. J. We'll put links down below. If you want to work with us, we are available worldwide. We work with a wide variety of patients, from the young, from the old, females, men, etc. A lot of hormone issues, a lot of gut issues, a lot of toxicity issues. That's our specialty. We're here to help you out. And if you want to support us, we'll put links down below to different products that we recommend in regards to today's podcast. Evan, anything else?
Yeah, last thing I would say, so many people have already tried everything and been to everybody and seen many, many people before they come to us. So I'm not bragging about that, but it just happens to be that you and I are the people who are working with people generally somewhere close to the end of their rope. And that puts a lot of pressure on us clinically to make sure that we get good results. And we come through with that. And you can read hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of 5-star of our clinic reviews, not just the podcast reviews, but the clinical reviews too. So I encourage people that if you're like, oh God, could these guys really help? I don't know. I've already seen this person and that person. I've seen a lot of people do what was called functional and was not functional. Like, oh, I went to this integrative doctor and she ran one blood test for the hormones and that was it. It's like, that's not a functional protocol. I'm sorry. You didn't
Yeah,
get anywhere
not enough.
close to the functional workup that they're claiming. So
Not
functional is
enough.
becoming this marketing term, but there's
Yeah,
so many people that are not truly doing that. And I want to just encourage you and give you inspiration that we're doing the real deal here. So
100%. Really appreciate it. All right, guys, you enjoyed it. Thumbs up, comments below. We're here to help. Have a good one, yo. We'll be back
take
soon.
care.
Take
See
care.
ya. Bye bye.
Bye.